It's time for another podcast by George. Straight talk, straight from the Heartland, that'll have you saying, "By George, I think he's got it." Now, here's George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George. Got another great show, somebody that I really like, somebody that I adore, folks, somebody that's a hero, a heroine, they used to say, of mine, and it is Ingrid Newkirk from PETA. She's coming back on the podcast by George Live Line. Ingrid is an animal rights activist, author, and PETA president. She's best known for the issue awareness campaign she organizes on behalf of PETA in order to promote animal rights. Since its founding, folks, PETA has exposed horrific animal abuse in laboratories, leading to many firsts, including canceled funding, closed facilities, and hundreds of charges filed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. PETA has also closed the largest horse slaughtering operation in North America. Yeah, a horse slaughtering operation shut down by the good folks at PETA. Convinced dozens of designers and hundreds of companies to stop using fur, cleaned up wretched animal pounds, helped schools switch to alternatives to dissection. Remember your dissecting classes in school, folks? Provided information on vegetarianism, companion animal care, and countless other issues to millions of people. As PETA president, Ingrid has spoken internationally on animal rights issues all over the globe, from the steps of the Canadian Parliament to the streets of New Delhi, where she spent her childhood. And Ingrid, of course, is an abolitionist and remains committed to the idea that animals are not ours to eat, wear, experiment on, or use for entertainment. So let me take this off screen. Let me click this button here and click another button there, and she should come on. There she is. Good morning. Hi, Ingrid.
Good morning, George. Nice introduction there.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's well-deserved, a life of this. And we're going to get into this book that was authored by you many, many years ago now in its 30th anniversary edition. I want to have that promoted a little bit towards the end of the show, but I want to start off with some topical news on some issues that you're well aware of. And this was in our own Des Moines Register here in the Heartland in just the past week or two. Something PETA has been very actively involved in. I want you to comment on it. A judge has struck down the fourth Iowa Ag-Gag law in an ongoing conflict over free speech versus trespassing. And of course, I'm up with animal rights. I'm up with free speech. So this is a huge deal with Podcast by George. A federal court has once again blocked Iowa's efforts to bar animal rights activists from gaining access to commercial livestock operations. Now, this is kind of complicated in a lot of ways. The decision, it says, is the latest strand in a tangle of legislation and litigation over the issue of agricultural trespass laws. Since 2012, Iowa has passed 4 of those statutes, which opponents refer to as Ag-Gag laws, including me, because, like I said, I'm on the correct side of both issues of this, both First Amendment and the animal rights issues. They target various conducted by animal rights activists who have published video and images from inside large livestock facilities, sometimes infiltrating them by signing on as employees without revealing their intent. Now, one of the guys that made this famous that I had on my show was Matt Johnson. He went in this facility here in Iowa undercover, or someone that he knew did, and they got this video spirited out, and it was not easy, of this horrific animal shutdown, oxygen shutdown. They cooked these animals with hot air. It couldn't have been more gruesome and horrific. Raise some awareness for it, and it shows the value of allowing this type of thing to take place, this type of coverage, Ingrid. And I know that you've been there, you've done that. Tell us about PETA's role in this.
Well, we were part of that litigation that challenges the Ag-Gag. And this, as you say, is the 4th one, because pig farmers are scurrilous because they don't want the public to see, and if they want you to buy it, you should be entitled to see how it's made. And I'm not talking about just blood and guts. I'm talking about pain and suffering. I mean, pigs are like you and me. That may be outrageous for a pig farmer to hear, but in the same breath, they'll tell you they love their animals. So which way is it?
Yes.
They have eyes, they have hearts, they have feelings, they get lonely, they don't want to die. They're exactly like us. And so if you're going to notch their ears without anesthetic, cut their testicles off without anesthetic, it's the same as if you were doing it to a human being. And if you think it's okay to do, then let the consumer see it, let them hear the pig scream, let them see what we have found, which is grown men dropping a cinder block on a sow's head and laughing at it. We have the right to see, and you don't have to care about animals to know that in the United States of America, there is supposed to be the freedom to see what you're being sold, how it's made.
Full and open disclosure. We all benefit all the time from that on all issues. And I talk all the time about climate, war, and healthcare on my show and how they're interrelated and how they intersect. And this is part of it, folks. We are all better if we know what's going on. And that's what this is all about. And they're trying to hide this. They're trying to gag this. And you got to ask yourself the question, why? If it's no big deal, why don't they want people to see this? And I want to say this, and I've told this story before, and I think I might have mentioned it when you were on before, Ingrid. When I was a kid growing up on the farm raising hogs, I had to load them up into the truck to go to the slaughterhouse. We used to call it the packing plant. I try not to do that anymore, to be slaughtered. And these hogs are smart enough. They knew it. I mean, they knew not to get in that truck. I could round them up, go anywhere with them. I mean, I hung out with them basically in the hog lots. They would not get on that truck. They knew about what was going to happen. And I just had, probably 6 months ago, had Amber Canavan on, a coworker of yours with PETA. She told me something that I was not aware of, Ingrid, and that is hogs have been shown not only to be capable of playing video games with a joystick, they seem to enjoy doing it. I mean, to me, that's incredible because I'm barely smart enough to play a video game, but hogs can. And what we're eating the guts of somebody that plays or something that plays video games. I thought that was very striking.
Yeah, it's someone. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
University of Bristol Agricultural School, they've done all sorts of things. And one of the things they've done is teach pigs that if they want it to be hotter or colder, they can actually control the thermostat. They go up with their snouts and they turn the heat on or the heat off or whatever they want. I mean, these are not tables and chairs. These are thinking, living, feeling beings. They're emotional. On the cover of one of my other books, I have a mother sow who has a piglet. She adores her piglet cuddled up next to her, and you cannot miss. And you just can't miss the expression on her face. It's the same as any loving mother's expression, is that she has joy that there is her baby. And yet on these farms, as you know, the pigs are kept in what are called iron maidens, like the old medieval torture device. And they cannot even turn around in their lifetime there. And they cannot nuzzle their piglets. And the farmers will say, oh, well, that's because they crushed them if they got close to them. Well, in the wild, they don't do that. They build a nest. A sow will actually collect twigs and leaves and make a nest. And it's secure for her and for her babies, her piglets. But on a factory farm, they can't turn around, they can't move, they can't get away. And yes, they will probably crush their piglets. But what sort of person can see a living being and look them in the face, see the expression on their faces, and decide to keep them for life in a metal box, basically a see-through metal box, from which they cannot take one step, cannot turn around, and cannot interact with other pigs?
Well, I want to get into this a little bit. I'll mention it a couple of times probably during this show, but my biggest point about this is a lot of people, for instance, even this show, they don't want to think about this stuff. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to read your books. So here's the most recent one that's been re-released. We're going to talk about that because they just can't take it. It's mind breaking. Yet they will be a part of this. I mean, they will be the ones that are eating and playing a role in this instead of being vegetarian or vegan. And you can't just stick your fingers in your ears and cover your eyes and look the other way because that is contributing to the problem. Complicity is part of the issue here. Now, I want to bring this back up on screen because I want to get through this article very quickly. Let me see if I can bring this back. The animal rights groups filed lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of the first, second, and fourth laws. The first law was initially blocked by a federal judge, but was partially revived on appeal. The second law also was blocked, and an appeal to it currently is pending. The third law, criminalizing food operation trespass, was upheld by a judge after a criminal defendant sought to dismiss his charges on the grounds the law was unconstitutional. The ruling concerns the fourth law, which was adopted in 2021. Okay, there's Matt Johnson. I mentioned him. He's the animal activist that went in with that video camera or had somebody do it. I don't know which, and got that horrific video. The law in question applies to any person who, while trespassing, knowingly places or uses a camera or electronic surveillance device that transmits or records images or data while the device is on the trespassed property. A first offense is an aggravated misdemeanor, while subsequent offenses are felonies. That's incredible, Ingrid. We're talking about a felony charge for somebody showing on video what people are eating, how it's killed, what happens. All you're seeing is reality, and you can be stuck in prison for that.
That's right. And next week, actually, there's the United States Supreme Court is going to be considering a case that came out of California where some meager protections for pigs were passed, where they will allow a little space in their whole miserable life before they hit the slaughterhouse truck. And the pork producers are fighting it tooth and nail. And they've gone to the United States Supreme Court to say, you cannot impose this on us, because this law was passed in California in 2018. So it's been 5 years that the pig producers have denied pigs even that little teeny bit of extra space. They say, well, you can't tell us what to do in production, but if you want us to buy it, you should tell us. And as for these people who say, I smell the bacon cooking, I can't resist it. We are supposed to be, we pride ourselves on being thinking animals. We shouldn't be ruled by our taste buds. And actually nowadays you can get fake bacon and you can get sham ham and it tastes just the same. And if it didn't, who cares? I mean, what sort of person doesn't have the decency to look another animal, another living being in the face and decide, I'm not going to torture and slaughter you?
Well, and on the topic of bacon, I never ate a lot of bacon anyway, but this is BLT season in Iowa, bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwiches. All summer long, I've been using Morningstar Farms, the bacon product that they have, which is vegetarian. You cannot tell the difference. I mean, in a BLT, because you're eating it for the tomatoes and everything else, it's basically a flavoring, and it's crispy, and it's just like regular. I mean, you can't tell the difference. And every time I eat one, Ingrid, I feel good because I'm saving the life of one of these animals. Okay, let's finish off this article now. U.S. District Judge Stephanie Rose, the same judge who found the state's second such a law unconstitutional last year, again ruled the state had exceeded its bounds in passing the latest law. Our governor doesn't like that, boy, and neither does our attorney general. Recording, editing, and producing videos are all protected conduct under the First Amendment, Rose. And the landowner has some rights to block others' First Amendment's activity on their property. The government does not have the same authority, she found. And I would say there's a public interest there because those private property owners, they're all underwritten, folks, by us financially. I mean, we are paying for this with massive multi-billion-dollar ag subsidies. Let us in and have a look. I don't give a tinker's damn about their rights to keep these people off on some kind of private property ownership basis. That is baloney. This is what the government cannot do, says Rose, quote, hence, the act creates criminal liability enforced by the state of Iowa based on an individual engaging in activity protected by the First Amendment, she wrote. So that's that dissection that I was talking about on these issues. I want to bring this up again and get Ingrid's comment on this, because this is from the Great Lee camp. And this water issue is becoming ever present, more present every single passing day. If you live in the Western United States, folks, I've been saying on my podcast for months that I think California, as an example, is going to run out of water in a couple of years. That's the way it looks to me anyway. Lee Camp says, fun fact, you save as much water by skipping one hamburger as skipping 2 months of showering. I mean, it's hard to believe. And the article that he's referencing here is California is suffering through the driest 3 years ever recorded. No relief in sight. It's going to get worse. Here's the facts that he's citing, Ingrid. This is remarkable. Did you know that it takes 2,500 gallons of water to produce only 1 pound of beef? That's a huge amount of water for just one hamburger. And if you eat one hamburger a week, that's 10,000 gallons of water a month, 120,000 gallons of water in just 1 year. And I know PETA has been all over this even before people were talking about this huge crisis in California and other places. This goes back with you folks for decades.
Oh, it does, yes. And we've always said you cannot be a meat and dairy eating environmentalist. California, of course, is home to all these cattle ranches, and they are just sucking the aquifers dry. They are sucking all the water out of the ground. And that, combined with drought, is not sustainable. In a few years, it just will collapse anyway. So it's sort of like the tobacco farmers. You can either say, well, I'm going to carry on doing this as long as I can, or you can look for an alternative way to earn a living. In California, the cattle people have been casting aspersions on the almond growing orchards, saying, oh, well, that uses a lot of water. Well, it doesn't use a smidgen of water compared to cattle ranching. So that's not sustainable. That's going to dry up. And we have been after the governor. We have been out there showering on the public streets to say, look, we can shower here all day long during your water crisis because we don't eat meat. And we can shower for the rest of the year for what somebody would use just consuming a week's worth of meat. So if you don't care about animals, you might care about what your grandchildren are going to have on this earth a little later on.
Well, yeah, and that reminds me, Ingrid has been arrested many times. She walks it like she talks it, folks, and the folks at PETA do that. She's talking about that showering activity that they do. I mean, they're great at activism and taking this to the streets, and that's what we got to do. And to your point here, if you don't care about yourself, care about your grandchildren, or you don't care about the animals, care about your grandchildren. But I always make the point, care about yourself, because we are eating ourselves into early graves, folks. I have Dr. Andrew Nish on the show all the time. The obesity epidemic in the United States is unparalleled in human history, more than the ancient Romans who just sat around in togas, basically. My God, we are foundering like Shetland ponies at a trough of animals. Here, this is from Trust American Health. Bring this up big enough that I can read it. Obesity rates vary considerably between states and regions of the country. In 2020, Mississippi had the highest adult obesity rate at 39.7%, 40% of the people obese, followed by West Virginia at 39.1%, Alabama 39%, Colorado had the lowest obesity rate nationally at 24.2%. Nationally, 16 states now have adult obesity rates at or above 35%. Reaching the 35% or higher level this year were Delaware, Iowa, Ohio, and Texas. The 12 states that continue to have adult rates above 35% are, get ready, folks, Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia. As recently as 2012, no state had an adult obesity rate above 35%. Okay, so 2012, we're talking 10 short years ago, no state had an adult obesity rate above 35%, but we are celebrating this eating. And of course, animals are right at the center of it. The point that I make is we don't need to do this for ourselves, and certainly for the animals. It is killing us. It is killing them. And as an example, Ingrid, I think the most fattening category of food is barbecue. And of course, that's all animals. I mean, my God, to kill ourselves. Yeah.
And cheese. I mean, you cannot forget cheese, because cheese is basically Vaseline. I mean, you're just slathering that stuff on everything. And there was a plan, of course, put by industry, who else? The dairy people, to go to the fast food places and offer triple cheese pizza and cheese on everything. And they come around, you go to Olive Garden, They come around with that grinder thing and say, do you
Yes.
want extra cheese on it? Cheese, our consumption of that has just gone through the roof. I like to look at the old films, the old TV shows like Father Knows Best and so on. Any of them, if you look back, nobody was fat. Not
Yes.
even obese, they weren't fat. Everybody was slim. They weren't eating all this meat, they weren't eating all this cheese. And if you go to the beach and you look at, or out to the park on a summer day, and you look at the men, so many of them have breasts.
Yeah.
I mean, other men should be drooling over these guys. You just watch them wiggle and jiggle down the pot, and you think, what is that from? It's not from soybeans.
Yes.
It's not from green beans. It's not from potatoes.
Yeah.
It's from meat and dairy. So if you don't want to be a 34D, then you might want to consider going vegan. And it's easy.
Yeah. And fat shaming is not in vogue. I mean, people really get upset about that. And a lot of people would look at this and say, well, what am I supposed to eat? Well, you just don't need to eat as much, and you don't need to eat the animals at all. It just is not necessary. It's not good for us. I'm going to bring this up on screen. I'm going to surprise Ingrid with this a little bit, because in that Des Moines Register article online, they had this video, and it's silent. So I'm going to read the sub captions here, but this is really great. And it's actually how I promoted the show about George the pig. People might be wondering, what about George? Well, here we go. Watch this, folks. George the pig was rescued after falling out of a livestock carrier on Interstate 35 near West Des Moines. So there's George. And those are people that saw him there. There he is, shaking in the cold. An animal rights activist, God love him, spotted George injured and cold on the road while driving home. Look at George. Activists had to negotiate with police and a livestock insurance company before being able to leave with him. After hours of negotiation, the activists were finally able to leave with George. Look at him there. God love George. Fell out of the truck on the way to the slaughterhouse. Folks, George now lives at the Iowa Farm Sanctuary, a vegan farm near Marengo. There's a good shot of George. So that one was saved. That's the video. And I got to say this, every time I see that, I think, he carries my namesake, George. But if you'd been hauling me to the slaughterhouse and I'd have fallen out of the back of the truck and I was injured and cold, I would want to whoop everybody's ass that I came in contact with. That's the other part of that. This is a dumb, stupid animal with no feelings. Did you see the expression on that animal's face? Did you see the way that he behaved? He was just looking for people to do the right thing. And they weren't going to until an animal activist, might have been a PETA member for all I know, showed up and saved his life. My God, what a video that is.
And you can save a pig every single day just by your dietary choices. We've got free vegan starter kits. No one should think that it's difficult. You can actually veganize any meal you like. I'm English, so I like shepherd's pie and, bangers and mash and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I veganized it all, and it's easy as can be, and it's all great. But yes, the face on that George is, how could anybody look at him and think, I want to kill him? Yeah, I definitely want to kill him. No, you can't have him. I want to kill him. I mean, please. All of them are just precious and wonderful. And if you get to know them, they have at least as much personality as any dog you've ever met. Of course, I know people who look at dogs and don't see them either. But my God, a pig is a dog, is a boy, is me.
That's exactly right. That's well stated. And having grown up on a farm and spent a lot of time around animals, I can say that you are exactly right. And the point that I make to people, we refer to them as dumb animals. Well, to the animals, we're dumb. I mean, we can't hardly see, we can't hardly smell, we can't hardly hear. Look what we're doing to our planet. We're turning it into, a feces-laden hog lot, worse than what any animal would do. We're destroying ourselves, and all they want to do is live. And we're taking them with us, and maybe taking them with us first. Okay.
Well, George, I have to say, there's something on Twitter now that you have to see. It's a crow who has a test of different shaped objects and goes and puts each one in the right one. There's a star and a block and a circle and so on. Yeah. And they juxtapose this with a man trying to put his luggage in an overhead bin on an airplane, and he can't get it right. It's just one suitcase, and he cannot. And then someone eventually comes and helps him. And it says, which species, and pigs, as you pointed out, they can figure things out. They can think. There's a brain between those ears.
We just got to start thinking about it. I'm going to continue to sound the call. I'm reminded I was on the bike path, and there were some cattle, some cows in a pasture nearby, and there was a young woman, and she jumped off of her bike and taken her cell phone, and she'd run up to the fence, and I wanted to make sure she was all right. She hadn't fallen off the bike, and she says, "There's babies in there," and I said, "Yeah, that's how it works. I mean, hey, that's great." But then I also thought, my God. And I hope that's not the case. Maybe it wasn't. I hate to condemn people, but she was probably going to go to McDonald's that night. I mean, we got to think. And speaking of thinking, let me get this up on screen here, because I could talk to Ingrid all day easily. But this is the 30th anniversary edition of Free the Animals. And this is a book. It's a kind of a thriller, detective, police book. I've got my edition here. I want to bring this up on screen. Here it is, right here. Let me get. Oh yeah. So, and this is a great book, and it is a great way to support PETA. People can buy this thing for about $20 and get something for themselves. Again, get some value. And now it's a different category. I talk about the pigs and the cattle and that type of thing because I'm here at Murder USA in the Heartland. We kill more hogs than any place in the world right here. But this has a lot to do about laboratories and animal experimentation and monkeys and that type of thing. Tell us about Free the Animals, Ingrid.
Well, there is a bit in it about pigs because the U.S. Department of Agriculture was doing genetic experiments, putting human genes inside pigs when I wrote that book first. And of course, those pigs all died. It didn't work. It just doesn't. But yeah, you're right. I think it's 121 million pigs a year who are killed for the table in the United States alone. And I always say, as I talk about in the book, with monkeys and dogs and all these animals, each one is an individual. Each one felt the pain and the trauma. But in my book, I talk about these wonderful activists who took it a step further than just saying, I'm not going to be complicit in the deaths and the torture of these animals. I'm actually going to go into some of these places like Johnson that you had on your show and get them out. And the funny thing with him, because he could as well be a character in Free the Animals, is that the pig farmers were so upset that they dropped charges against him over and over again because they didn't want the facts to come out in court. They didn't want the public to see. And all you have to do is stop doing what you're doing, and then nobody will care because nobody will need to see the cruelty that goes on. And that cruelty is criminal.
Yeah, and you mentioned Matt Johnson. One of the things I like about him is he's not what you would consider to be your stereotypical tree hugger kind of a guy. I mean, he's ex-military. I mean, he's hard as nails, this guy is. And that also was something, when I was reading Free the Animals, hold it up here again, that I was struck by. This book was way ahead of its time because its protagonist, the hero in this, is a young woman. And of course, all of the creative works today really are that way, including like the movie Star Wars. They've shifted around from, men, and particularly old men, being the heroes. Well, it's a young woman, Valerie, in this book, and it has to do with a lot to do with policing. A lot of people aren't aware of this, Ingrid. I am, that your background was in policing. I always look at this when I was reading the book. I think, am I reading about your alter ego here? I mean, tell us about that.
Well, I was a deputy sheriff for many years and busted a large number of people, including a lot who were doing things for animals. And one story I think George, is before I got into animal rights, one of the things that made me stop eating pigs, the thing that made me stop eating pigs, was going to an abandoned farm and finding dead pigs, one of whom was alive, and taking that poor little pig to the pump and getting him some water for the first time in days, hearing his grunts, putting him on the truck to go to the vet, and then thinking to myself, I've got pork chops for dinner. And then thinking, hang on a minute, there's a connection that I'm not making here. And as I say, I hadn't seen a slaughterhouse at that time, but we all know that they're not places you take children for a picnic. Although PETA always says, when someone says we're building a slaughterhouse, do you object? we say, well, we object, but we mostly object to what causes you to build a slaughterhouse, which is people who buy. But if you're going to build it, give it glass walls so we can all see, and take the children through so they can decide for themselves if they want to eat the animal parts that will come out of it.
Well, I want to encourage everybody to get this book, and it's very easily done. You can just go to PETA.org and you can order it. Now, there's a couple of other things about this book that I was really struck with, and I'm the foreword, the part before the book, Joaquin Phoenix. You've got some friends in high places. I mean, some famous people. He writes a very beautiful opening to this book, and I've got a film clip with him that I want to bring up because, again, he has really taken PETA as his cause, and I've got this video, and this is something that people don't. Maybe you can set this up for us, Ingrid, because this is something that a lot of people don't think about, and it has to do with fish. I talk to people that they actually think they're vegetarian and they eat fish. I mean, tell us about that.
Well, a fish is not a swimming potato.
Yeah.
I mean, the fish may not look like us, although they have eyes, they have a mouth, which we inconsiderately put a hook through. And I always say your lips are so sensitive. Can you imagine being pulled out of your environment by a hook through your lip? And of course, commercial fishing is even worse. But Joaquin was on a boat when he was a little boy, and he saw a fisherman pull up, somebody on the boat pull up a fish onto the deck, and he watched that fish just thrashing around, gasping, desperate to stay alive. And he asked his mother, what's going on here? And his mother said, well, that's, people are going to eat that fish. And he related to the fish, and he thought, I'm not going to eat any animals anymore. So I think there is no science that says that fish are insensitive. Every bit of science says that they feel terrible pain and that they die very badly just for a fleeting taste. But there is, of course, vegan fish now, vegan shrimp, there's vegan everything. But Joaquin that's what set him on the road to caring about what we eat.
All right, great. I want to play this clip. I mean, this guy knows drama, obviously, knows a little bit of theater, and that's what this is. Anything else you want to say about this before I roll it?
I think I know what you're going to show. Is it the drowning one?
Yes.
Yeah, bless his heart. He went into that tank of water, and he put himself in the place of the fish, and he did it just before he got an Academy Award, not the last one, the one before that. The last one, he spoke in favor of mother cows and their calves. But the one before that, he said, please, don't serve fish. Don't serve any animals and include fish. They're not things.
All right, so watch this, folks. This is Joaquin Phoenix. This one has audio, so I won't have to talk through this one. Just watch and listen.
In water, humans drown, just as fish suffocate on land. It's slow and painful and frightening. And we do it to more than 1 trillion fish every year. Put yourself in their place. Try to relate.
Yeah, so that is drama. When I see that, I'm struck by it. Go vegan. Absolutely. But the other part about this is if you just can't get there, if you're just too busy, if you just go vegetarian, just eat less animals, just cut back on the hamburgers, do something, eat less fish, take seafood off the table. I mean, I never ate seafood very much. I'm in the Heartland, of course. We eat more than our share of pork chops and hamburgers, of course. But I mean, do something. That's kind of the way that I feel about it.
Yeah, try to relate to who is on your plate. And if we can help in any way, that's why we exist. We're not here just to nag. We're here to help. And so we have tips, we have recipes, we have cookbooks, we can veganize anything. And I promise that anybody who tries to go that way, take that step, we're here for them. We have mentors. You can ask something. What can I do about this? What can I take to a party? What can I feed my child, that she or he will love? Anything you want to know, we're here. The health benefits, the environmental benefits, the benefits for animals are all enormous. And one day we're going to look back, our grandchildren, if the earth is still here, are going to look back and think, what were you thinking that
Yes.
you still ate other living beings who are just like you?
I want to bring this comment up on screen. This is from Pamela Milner from back in the day, who I really love, as she brings up this point. And this is something that I wanted to discuss. I might have forgotten if Pam hadn't sent this along, but she says, I can barely eat any meat or any fish, maybe never. And the point here is, here, to my mind, it ain't natural. I mean, there are a lot of people that fall into this category. Same way with dairy, with lactose intolerance and that type of thing. It probably shouldn't be done. And give us kind of your elevator pitch, Ingrid, when you hear people say that, well, humans were meant to eat meat. We have incisor teeth for that reason, and we're supposed to be meat eaters like the lions on the, savannas of Africa and that type of thing. How do you respond to that?
I respond to that by saying, read a little, look a little bit deeper, because it's just bunk. As you said, informed choices are everything. The greatest paleontologist, I think probably ever, was Richard Leakey. And Leakey did all the anthropological studies. And he says, as anybody who studies anatomy, we don't have these canines that tigers have to rip apart flesh. We have fingers for plucking and picking and things. We have teeth that grind for grinding grain. Our intestines are one of the reasons that we're so sick, that we get so many problems if we eat meat and dairy, is that a carnivore's intestines are very short because they expel what is already rotting. When you put a dead thing in your mouth, it's already started to decompose, and you need to expel it very quickly. Human beings' intestines wind around and around and around and around for yards. And so that rotted stuff gets stuck inside you. And that leads to all these problems. Of course, meat also gives us high blood pressure and diabetes and all these other problems too. So, yeah, we are not carnivores. The other primates, if we look at them, and there are other primates, are mostly fruit and they eat natural foods. And there's nothing natural about hanging a pig up by his hind leg and slitting his throat and listening to him scream and then thinking that's edible. What are you eating?
Yeah.
After a while, when you've stepped away from eating flesh, you look at it, the smell of it, the look of it, knowing what it is, it really revolts you, and you wonder how you could have missed what it actually is and gone along with thinking that that's part of a normal diet. It is not. We are not carnivores.
Yeah, if ancient man and ancient woman had to rely on their ability to run down game to be able to eat it, there wouldn't be any us. I mean, we're too slow of foot, folks. I mean, that was not happening. Again, that's not natural. Okay, so I'm glad we've got enough time here, because I like to have these fast facts that I do on Podcast by George. I want to bring up some PETA fast facts. I want to run these. There's going to come up between, there we go. That's between Ingrid and I. And I got these from the PETA site. This one really surprised me, Ingrid. We are pro chicken meat, but there's a caveat here. Tell us about that.
Well, nowadays you can get vegan chicken very, very easily. And we are, I suppose, and I'm not sure where this comes from, but I am sure that we are pushing the idea that if you really, really want to have the taste of chicken, then you can try the Gardein chicken. You can try these other chickens. What we are is we're pro-chicken keeping their own meat. It belongs to them, not to us, like animals' fur, like their wool, like everything else.
All right, let me bring the next one up here. We are part owners of SeaWorld. That's a surprising one. I learned a lot looking at these things. Is that still the case? Is SeaWorld?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
We're a shareholder at SeaWorld, and we do that with quite a few companies. We try to negotiate, we try to meet, we protest, we do everything. We have the facts, the figures, and the reasons that they shouldn't have orcas and dolphins and sea lions in small watery cells. And then if they're not listening, and they have had to listen, they've had to stop breeding orcas. They've had to stop capturing them at sea, those kinds of things. But they've had to stop standing on dolphins' noses in shows. But there are still things they need to do. And one of those things is let those animals go back to seaside sanctuaries and back to the ocean. So we buy stock, And that means we can bring a shareholder resolution.
That's the American capitalist way. That's how you do it. This says we break records. I didn't put a listing there as to what that is, but I know this, again, dovetails very nicely with your career, with your life. PETA has done a lot.
We have broken records. I mean, with the number of cruelty prosecutions that we have brought, with the number of retailers that we have stopped from using fur and Angora, with the number of animal shows that we have put out of business and made them into human-only circuses and entertainments, with the number of roadside zoos that we have closed down, those hideous little decrepit things you see in the countryside. And of course, I mean, we break records all day long with the number of humane education materials we get into schools, the number of children who have stopped dissecting, and just we keep going.
Okay, let's. I thought this was interesting. We act like the U.S. Postal Service. This has more to do with your approach to the issues. Talk about that.
I'm not sure what that means, actually. You'll have to read that from the site. But I suppose it's that it might be that neither wind nor rain nor whatever
Yes, it is.
stops
Yep.
us. Is it that?
That's exactly that.
Yeah, we are absolutely committed to improving the lot of animals, to reducing the amount of suffering, to stopping the killing. And so whatever you throw at us, we're still coming.
Yeah. Now, I thought this was interesting because we talked about your activism and the fact that you folks make a show and you put it in people's faces and they don't like it sometime, but that's not really the PETA approach. It's to play nice and it's to play the game to win, really. And sometimes you have to do it like we talked about, kind of inside baseball to save these animals. So it isn't all, just throwing animal blood on people and making everybody mad. I mean, PETA does play nice and does get things done that way.
Yeah, former president of the United States said, those who make peaceful change impossible make violent revolution inevitable. He was
Kennedy.
probably right. Yes.
Yes, JFK. Yep.
Yes, but I mean, this is a variant on that. Is we always start out nice. We always want to put the facts and the figures and the alternatives. We do the homework. We make it easy. We approach politely. We offer our scientists, our experts, our biologists, our zoologists, anything you want. We even throw money into it for alternatives to what somebody is doing that's cruel. But if people dig their heels in, corporations say, we don't care. Like Eli Lilly is still drowning little animals in beakers of water to test antidepressants. Other companies aren't doing it. They won't even meet. So we're not going away. So that's when we escalate, and then we'll start ramping it up. And that's how we got General Motors to stop crash tests on pigs and other animals, is they wouldn't meet. And so we just kept escalating until they didn't want to see our donated cars on fire outside their showrooms.
Yeah, and it's so ridiculous in a lot of respects. You mentioned the Eli Lilly thing, and I know you had issues with NASA once, and these car wreck things that you're talking about. It just isn't necessary. It doesn't work. I mean, this experimentation that we've talked about doesn't result in anything productive or good at all. They continue to hook people up to, pig livers and kidneys and stuff like that, and it isn't providing any benefit. Talk about that a little. I mean, it's non-productive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not productive. And also, everybody knows the adage that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes.
So what you're talking about with diet is you don't have to go down this road where you're going to end up in the emergency room with what kills most Americans or most people in the world these days in affluent countries. You can prevent that with just a little bit of research into your diet, which, as I say, we'll do for you. But these experiments, we're looking at one now. The Navy has been funding with taxpayer dollars to the tune of millions of dollars. Experiments, I mentioned one of them in the book, and I think we've talked about it before, where they decompress, they deep dive an animal in a chamber, and they simulate the bends, where they bring the animal back up from the deep, and they suffer excruciatingly painful back pain. They get air bubbles inside them. When I wrote the book 40 years ago, it's now reissued and modernized. They had been doing it for 40 years. So now they've been doing it for 80 years, and the treatment for the bends hasn't changed. There are, in 2022, all sorts of wonderful things that you can do to get results and to learn about what happens in the human body. You certainly don't need to take a mouse or a rat or a beagle or a monkey and try to simulate what is actual experience. And we have got such cockamamie rubbish going on now at our expense, where experimenters are feeding lard to primates, to fellow primates, to monkeys, to see about obesity. You know, you can just look out of the window and you can pay people out there to come and tell you why they're obese or what they're doing.
Yes. Just go to the state fair and follow people around to the food tents. All right, God. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. Okay, so we prefer to play nice. We give celebrities the benefit of the doubt. You know, back in the day, that's how I used to think about PETA. You know, you were very active in condemning these celebrities and their wearing of furs and, you know, the things that they did. Then you've got celebrities like Joaquin Phoenix that are on board now providing that wonderful video. Also, I got to mention Chrissy Hines. I have, you know, a lot of music on my show from the Pretender. She also writes a forward for this book. Celebrities are a friend of PETA.
They really are. But, you know, when we say we give them a break, is we will condemn them if they're taking money for promoting, as they used to in the old days, fur. And we will go after them and say, you know, don't pimp out for the fur industry. But celebrities are like anybody else, and they often have very little clue of what's going on in the real world. At the moment, we're very angry with a number of celebrities who are buying these little purebred dogs. Yes. A lot of them come in from puppy mills in Korea. They come in from puppy mills in Iowa. And they are, you know, basically puppy breeding factory farms. And we've got shelters that are bursting at the seams with wonderful dogs and cats who all want homes. And as soon as you buy one from one of these breeder people, then you condemn a dog or a cat you could have adopted from a shelter and given a wonderful home. You could have saved a life, and instead you're not. So these celebrities are buying these little push-nosed dogs like Boston Bulls, French Bulldogs, Pugs. They can barely breathe.
Yes.
In summer, you see them huffing and puffing along the street. People think that's normal. Celebrities, like anybody else, haven't really thought about it. And so we cut them a break and educate them, or try to. And if they don't listen on some important issue, yeah, we'll go after them. But we've got a lot of celebrity supporters, I'm happy to say.
Important issues. Again, I think about George the Pig. Nobody saw that video, and nobody's aware of George the Pig's plight and how that's reflective of the bigger important issue. Yet Kim Kardashian was trending on Twitter this week, being sued in some kind of a cryptocurrency thing. I mean, a lot of people are seeing her, and of course, she's one of these celebrities you're talking about with the animals. And okay, our rescue workers are on call 24/7. We talked about that a little bit. You have nanotechnology experts and molecular biologists on staff. I think you also talked about that. I'm going to continue to run through these because I've got a lucky 13 of these. Now, this was interesting. We're changing the way the Chinese government does things. Now, again, PETA think about you in the United States, but you're worldwide, and you'll work with anyone on behalf of animals.
Well, the Chinese government is rather a challenge because they're not very anxious to listen to what anybody foreign says. So they really don't want what they think of as outside interference. One of the issues that they have is that there's a thing called Yi-Jiao, which goes into a lot of Chinese herbal medicines and goes into a lot of sports drinks that are sold in China, but also end up in Chinese grocery stores here. And Yi-Jiao comes from the boiled down skin of slaughtered donkeys that they're getting from Africa and all over the world. And so we're working on that, but that's a tough one because the government, just as France, the government says, oh, foie gras, which is the forced-fed liver of a duck, is a national treasure. The Chinese government thinks Yi-Jiao is a national food. But we have got the Chinese government to accept non-animal tests for cosmetics and household products. And that took a lot of doing, but it came about with the cooperation of major cosmetic and household product manufacturers in the US who said, I won't sell my products in China if you insist that they be animal tested. So we're beholden to them, and we worked with them cooperatively.
Great. Okay, we're running through the list here. We mentioned the fact that this is not your first rodeo. Obviously, we bring out all these current issues and news, but this is something you've been on the front line about for decades, and that is the closing one. Also, we started it all, and PETA is very proud of that, and rightfully so. This book is an example. This thing, I mean, this is the 30th anniversary edition of the book, folks, that we had up earlier. Let me see if I can bring the cover back up here, but. Maybe in closing, just talk about. Let me get that off of there. Talk about the book in closing a little bit, Ingrid. And again, I don't want to pump your tires too much, but this is your life's work. This is what you have been devoted to, and you have had successes. Now, things are not perfect. They're not the way that we would want them, obviously, but you have done a lot of good.
Well, George, I've considered myself extremely lucky that I found something I cared about. As a little girl, I grew up loving my dog, and I cared about animals. I didn't want to see them caused any pain. And I've been lucky enough to find that I can devote my entire life to making sure that that's what I do. The book is an adventure story. It's a thriller. It has wonderful rescues in it. It's uplifting. It's exciting. And I'm not just saying that. I wrote it to be that way. So it could be what I call my cheap airport read or my cheap summer read. So you really can just go through it very easily. But the abiding message in the end is you don't have to break into a lab and get animals out. You don't have to break into a place, and great if you do, but really just look at what you do in your day, the money you spend on food, on clothing, on entertainment, and make sure that in that equation, no animal is suffering because you have all the options in the world. You are in charge. You are a person who on your deathbed is going to look back at your life and hopefully think, I was always kind. I was always considerate. I always tried to understand. I always got the facts, and I didn't just go along with things that are unacceptable.
Well, we're running around just about an hour here. We're running out of time. You've been very generous, by the way, with your time, Ingrid. It's always great to see you. It's great to have you back on the show. I've got the website address up there, www.peta.org. It couldn't be easier. Go there. You can order the book. You can contribute. You can join in. You can become an activist. Any number of things. You can find out how you change your diet and choose these vegan foods as substitutes, which I have tried, as I mentioned. They're great. It has immense benefit for animal kind and for humankind. That's going to be my last statement. I want you to make yours. I want to give you the last word here, Ingrid. Give us a close on this particular live line.
Well, I think let's raise our children right. And even if we're addicted to meat and cheese, let's not make sure they are. The thing I will leave with is, yes, we are on call 24/7. If in wherever you are, if there's an animal suffering and you can't get local help, you can call us. But really, please let us help you. PETA has endless resources, and that's why we exist, is to try to help you make your transition to a cruelty-free lifestyle.
Well, that's great. We'll send you on your way. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll be back again soon because, again, I'm living in the midst of it. I am in the eye of the hurricane.
Good.
Here in the Heartland, and I'm aware of it, and I'm trying to do what I can. Ingrid, thanks again for coming on Podcast by George.
Thanks a million, George.
We'll talk again soon. And folks, if you like this perspective, and you don't get a lot of this, particularly in this part of the world that I live in, let me tell you, this is a verboten topic in a lot of quarters. But if you like this, if you agree with this, if you want to continue to see this type of coverage emanating from murder capital USA right here in the Heartland, folks, you can go to podcastbygeorge.com. Pick a platform. You can choose Facebook and YouTube. You'll see the videos there. Like us, follow us, subscribe, ring the notification bell on YouTube as an example. And also, you can get the audio-only versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Deezer, places like that. You can find all of those at podcastbygeorge.com. But that is going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast